Hey everybody, this is Stream. I'm going to do something a little bit different today. I'm just going to be going through my the write-up that I do for Patreon. I'm doing this because my eyes are really bothering me today, and the contrast of the color on DraftKings is really messing with my eyes. So I'm just going to read off of the slate here. But overall, if you want to see this write-up every day, you can join my Patreon. Also, please hit that subscribe button on this video. I really do appreciate that, and the like button. And also check out the description below for Discord where you can join that, and that's free, totally free. And we do talk about the slate and all the stuff that comes with it. So with that said, let's get into the players themselves. First, for the point guard position, some Highland for Denver. If Jamal Murray is out, then he's got to have some pretty good upside. Also, Smith would have upside if he ends up starting. But Highland is the better option, assuming that he's probably going to be the starter if Murray is out. And his price point is pretty good here. He did really well last season when he started, and I like him again in this matchup here for Denver. The second guy is Trey Jones. Now, his price point has come up for San Antonio, but he's still in a pretty good play here and has upside in the matchup, and so I do like him in this situation. The next guy here is Tyrese Halliburton for Indiana. He has pretty good upside, and he's a top scorer for the team. Obviously, he's going to have a good matchup here with Keldon Johnson, but I do look like for both those guys to do pretty well today. Then Kevin Porter Jr. for Houston. He's in the plus matchup, but his price point is not as ideal as I'd like it, but he still has a pretty good potential in this matchup here. So against Memphis, so I do think he's in a good spot and should get plenty of minutes. Scotty Barnes for Toronto against Brooklyn is in a great spot here. Assuming Brisher is out, he will have a lot of upside in this matchup. His price point is pretty fair for what he potentially does. Then we're going to look at Marcus Smart for Boston. Also include Malcolm Brogdon here. They're basically splitting the minutes, and they're both about the same price point. And he is a good option, but he's not my favorite because he's more a defensive player. But in the first game, he did pretty well, and I look for him and Brogdon both to play well in this matchup against Miami. Then we'll look at Tyler Hero for Miami against Boston. He should be the starter here with the guys with Oladipo out, and assuming he does start, he's in a plus matchup here for that particular situation. And for Golden State Warriors, as long as Poole continues to come off the bench for limited Klay Thompson, he's going to have a plus matchup because he should be getting 30 or so minutes a game, and he's in a great spot in this particular matchup against Denver, especially if they don't have Murray. Then we're going to look at the shooting guard position. Josh Hart for Portland's in a pretty good spot. I do like him here. He has upside, and if he does start, which he should, he will have pretty good value here. Then we're going to look at Terry Rozier, whose price has come up a little bit, but he still has a lot of upside with LaMelo Ball out, and so I do think he's in a good spot. Then John Conchar from Memphis. Now his price point has come up, makes him a little bit less ideal, but he's still a pretty good value based on the price point, and he should get plenty of minutes and plenty of shot opportunities in this plus matchup for him against Houston. So I do like him a lot in this particular matchup. Then we're going to look at the small forward position. Cam Johnson, obviously, you're going to have to make sure that the injury situation is locked in here, but assuming that Cam Johnson starts, he's in a good spot and a good play for Phoenix against Portland. Then Gordon Hayward has a lot of upside in this matchup with Ball out for Charlotte. DeRozan for Chicago is my favorite play on the board. He's got a big boost with Ball and Levine out, and so I do love him here, especially in a great matchup here against a weaker team. He should get plenty of minutes against Washington and plenty of shot attempts and stuff like that. Then we're going to look at Kelly Oubre. Now, Kelly Oubre, he is going to likely start in this game, but he does have a lot of upside, but he does have a low floor, and so you do want to be careful with that because he does have a tendency to have bad games. Then Jason Tatum, he just played extremely well in the first matchup, and he's got another good matchup here against Miami. I look for him and Jimmy Butler to kind of go at each other, and I think his price point is still pretty fair for what his potential in this matchup is. Caleb Martin looks pretty solid today at $4,100. A little bit risky because of the matchup, but he's still in a pretty good spot, especially if he ends up starting. OG Anunoby is in a good spot, assuming that Boucher is still out. I don't like him as much if Boucher plays, but otherwise I do like him quite a bit. Buddy Hield looks like he's actually pretty fairly priced for this matchup here for Indiana against the Pacers, and him and Keldon Johnson should go at each other pretty good in this matchup. At power forward, Terry Taylor, he's a little bit of a risk here. He did start the last game and did pretty well. We do have to have him start again for him to pay off here, but overall his price point is pretty cheap. So if you're trying to save money, he's a good Hail Mary play at the power forward position as a discounted player, assuming he starts, obviously. Jalen Smith is another guy for Indiana. Now, if he starts and plays, which he's questionable currently, he's in a good matchup here and a good price point. But we do have to wait and see about that. Sante Aldama is in another. He's a good spot, and he likely will play considering the injuries to Memphis. And I do look for him to have a pretty decent play here. Not as lovely as his first game, obviously, but he should start and get quality minutes and get shot attempts. Then Keldon Johnson, he looks really too cheap for production in this matchup against Indiana. Both teams, I think, are going to be able to score pretty good here. And Keldon Johnson is the only guy one of the only guys on Indiana that really has a lot of upside outside of total. Then Jeremy Grant for Portland. He should get plenty of minutes here, and he played well in his first game, and I look for him to continue that. His price point is pretty fair, and I do like him in this matchup. Al Horford looks like he's in a pretty good spot. I think people are going to be scared of Al Horford today because of the matchup against Miami and because of the fact he got in foul trouble early in the last game. But the thing about Al Horford is he typically has more good games than bad ones when he starts. And with the injury to Robert Williams, he's still in a plus matchup for himself when it comes to his price point and his potential. So that's what I have for Horford. At center, DeAndre Ayton for Phoenix looks like in a pretty good matchup here. It gives him some good upside. His price point is still pretty low, and so I think he's a good value play. Not my favorite guy, but he's still pretty good here. Then we're going to look at Jacob Poeltl, who he actually seems pretty cheap for his production. And without a Turner playing for Indiana, he has a lot of upside. I think he'll be able to handle Isaiah Jackson or Terry Taylor, for that matter. Then Pascal Siakam. Now, he's got upside here, assuming that Boucher is still out. If Boucher plays, it does hamper him a little bit, just because Toronto tends to mess with their lineups a little bit more, and they won't get quite as many minutes. But overall, he's still a pretty good play, especially if Boucher is out. Vucevic seems a little bit too cheap for the matchup that he's got here against Washington, and I look for him to have a good game. He played well in the first game, and his upside goes up a lot with the guys out that are out for the Bulls, and I do think he's a great play on the slate. Wendell Carter looks too cheap for his production, maybe a little bit fairly priced, I don't know, but I still like him here again in Orlando against Atlanta, and I do think that they're in a great spot. He's in a great spot to be consistent and do well in this matchup. Kristaps Porzingis looks in a really good spot here. He's not as ideally priced as I would like, but he's still in a good matchup against Vucevic, and he should both of those guys should both have good games here. I don't suspect either one of them are going to have too terrible time, and his price is a little bit higher than I would really like him to be, but he's still okay. A good value play here is Day'Ron Sharpe for Brooklyn. He should get some pretty good minutes, and when he does play at least 25 minutes, he tends to get around 25 fantasy points, and that would definitely pay off today if he can get those minutes. And then finally, John Collins for Atlanta. He does have some upside here, but he is a little bit risky because sometimes Capella has the big game and he doesn't. But overall, he's been playing pretty well so far in the first game, and I look for him to continue that in a nice little plus matchup here against Orlando. So that's what I have for the slate here for DraftKings. Overall, I think it's a pretty solid slate. A lot of games, a lot of players to choose from. You're going to have to, mix and match guys to try to figure out what you like the most, but there's plenty of good upside. And I think scoring is going to be pretty high today. So thank you guys again for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. And have a nice day, guys.